Hey guys, Griffin here, and today I want to look through the logs of Kologarn to see what pharaohs are doing now in order to do really good DPS on a fight where you can't shred. So if you're not sure what I'm talking about, Kologarn is the boss that has the two arms, and essentially we can't get behind him, so we're not able to do shred damage, which people usually attribute to just it's a lost fight for pharaohs. However, there is a way that you can actually instead do a swipe rotation that you can hit all three targets, allowing you to do really good DPS. As you can see on here, there's 13,000. This is really solid DPS for a fight that even a month or two ago, pharaohs were absolutely struggling with, having to use special gear, special setups. Now they're probably still doing special gear and special setups, but for a different reason. So let me talk about what this is, and let me look at the first one. I'm just gonna say, first of all, shout out to anybody that's in like the top 10. I'm gonna only be talking about the top 5. In fact, I do want to give a special shout out to my boy, where we at, Table Slam right here, 41 in the US and the EU. And in case you're wondering why I'm only looking at US and EU, it's not to diminish the Asian group, it's just because it makes it hard for me to read through the logs when they're not in English. Nothing against any of the Asian logs, I apologize. It's just to make this video a little bit easier for me to work through. Okay, so like I was saying, let's look through a typical DPS setup. So as you can see, it's heavy swipe. Now I'm going to put on the screen really quick the location where you have to stand in order to achieve this. It is a little bit scary because you actually have to tip over the edge of the ground there and lean in. Now if you can't hit all three targets, try jumping when you swipe. It should allow you to hit all three targets. Now there's a couple things that really pop out here. So first of all, swipe is absolutely pumping, and the reason is because they're hitting all three targets. So you can see the Kologarn left arm, right arm here. This is the key to this. Now some other things they probably did. They are probably using the Mangle Glyph. They're probably using the Maul Glyph. That's right, the Bear Glyph. And they're probably using the Berserk because those are the three. So they might even have a special build just for this fight because it's so unique. Some other things I want to point out are, as you can see, they're not really doing heavily rake or heavily lacerate here. You're relying just purely on just swipe, mangle bear form, and then go back. In fact, I've even seen where they're hitting mangle and it's hitting three targets, so they're using it during a berserk. Now, if you look at the lengths of these fights, let me jump back here really quick. You'll see that they're all about 1 minute long, and this is really the goal you need to get to in order to see these kinds of numbers. You cannot sustain this kind of DPS over a 2 minute or 3 minute fight. It's just not. You need all the procs, and you need the bloodlust heroism up. As you can see, more than 50% of this fight, you have bloodlust / heroism up, and I bet that's gonna be the same for all of these. It is. So that is like, this one's absolutely crazy. I'm not sure how it shows them having bloodlust the whole time. But yeah, they apparently had bloodlust this whole fight. Anyway, regardless, let's go through how this works. So I'm going to switch this. If you don't know how these logs work, right now I'm looking at the tables that breaks it down like this, but I actually want to see the events. This is going to show me the order of everything they did, and I'm going to switch to casts. The reason I want casts over damage is because I also want to see when they did things like Enrage, Berserk, Savage Roar, Tiger's Fury, to see when they're using those abilities. So as you can see, they open with Mangle and then right into Savage Roar to get it up and going so they can start swiping right away. So they swipe, they Tiger's Fury, Hyperspeed, Gloves, Berserk, Potion of Speed. So they're just absolutely pumping at this point because they also have Bloodlust up at the same time. And then they're just going to start swiping, Global Thermal. I love, as you guys know, if you've ever seen my videos, I love people that use Global Thermal. Swipe, Survival Instincts. They might have pulled Threat here, which I think is crazy interesting. Instead of stopping, they just pop Survival Instincts so they could just keep pumping. And then you just can see they could just continue to swipe. I'm trying to see if they even took a break. Not even waiting a half a second. They just went right back to it. Swipe, Mangle, probably to get Savage Roar back up, and they swipe. I want to point out, this is also with a crazy amount of good Omen procs at this time. So they did Mangle, 2 swipes, and then a Savage Roar, and then they're swiping again. Now they're going into Dire Bear form, and you can see the main thing they're focusing on here is not Lacerate. Instead, they're using Maul. Maul is a big deal because if they glyphed into it, it's hitting 2 targets at the same time, allowing for these Mauls to be a lot more damaging than if it's only hitting 1 target. Yes, you are creating a lot of threat, You do need to be careful with this combination. Hopefully your tank is an absolute pumper, because for you to even do this, you need to have a pumping tank just leaning hard into the boss with every single boosting threat ability they've got, maybe even a DK. We'll look at the tank at the end if we want. But as you can see, this is pretty much the whole rotation, just back to swiping, back to mauling in bear form. So they're prioritizing the maul over something like a lacerate or even a mangle in bear form because of that Glyph of Maul. Really important, really interesting. And yeah, they finished with a ferocious bite. So let's jump to log number 2. Well, we might come back to this, but let's go to log number 2. By the way, big shout out to Albino Snake for being number 1. Okay, so Xianzu, I hope that I said that right. Again, another less than a minute fight, and they look very similar. They only used Rake twice. They have 0 lacerates. They're using Mangle in bear form and Maul in bear form heavily. This is a pretty solid comparison to the last one. They look, I bet if you look at the events, it'll look identical or very close to. So you open with Mangle again, Savage Roar, swipe. This looks, I wouldn't even be able to tell these two apart, because look, they're even doing global thermal right at the same time into swipe. So they probably put, I'm trying to figure out what they did. Maybe they manually pressed this. I'm kind of curious, because I have global thermal go off with my Berserk, but maybe it's just a timing thing because there's a slight delay there. But yeah, then they just go lean heavily into swipe, Mangle, Savage Roar. I actually looked at this the other day and I was wondering if this made sense, because yes, Mangle makes sense. You've got energy to use, and Savage Roar is probably falling off, but Savage Roar isn't going to benefit your bear, which is what they switched to immediately. And then they do Mangle Bear, Mangle Maul. I'm curious, they're actually still in Berserk here. They went out of energy here. They used Mangle, Savage Roar, and then they're still, because look, Berserk is at 4. This might have just fallen off. We're 14 seconds in. This Maul, no, you're right. Okay, I apologize. Berserk officially fell off here. I was gonna say, because if they get these Mangles during Berserk, that's also hitting 3 targets, absolutely pumping. And I'm sure there are scenarios where you can actually switch into bear form to get the Mangles. Again, threat might be an issue, but this looks so similar to the last one. It's absolutely crazy. So here they instead go with Rake and then Savage Roar. I'm wondering if it's because they do have a warrior that's keeping up the alternative buff. But as you can see, then they get into back to bear form and they just go Maul. They're probably starving on some rage here. So instead of doing Mangle Maul, normally you'd prefer Mangle, but in this case, because you're glyphed Maul, they're probably spamming Maul, and that's why. And this is really the big game changer is your Maul glyph. All right, let's look at Point Rar. Whoa, look at this. Again, heavy swiping cat, Maul and melee. So these are very similar stats. They did do 3 lacerates and 3 rakes. So they went a little bit more into the average rotation, maybe even out of habit, or maybe they've got someone doing Mangle Cat for them, or the Mangled similar debuff from warriors. They did do a Fairy Fire probably on the opener. Let's see where they use it. Oh no, in the middle. That's interesting. Probably not needed. Maybe they're putting Fairy Fire on the arms. And that's what that was. Let me go back so I don't have. I'm not going to go through this one breakdown, but as you can see, very similar, likely using the Maul glyph. Let's jump to number 4. All right, so Swipe Cat. Maul is number 2. Let's look at, I'm really curious. This one looks like one of the ones where they actually switched to bear form in Berserk. But that's because, hold on, I still don't understand how this guy had Bloodlust the whole fight, but we'll worry about that in a second. Let me look at events and casts, see where Berserk goes up at. Berserk is here at 9, so it'll fall off at 24, 25. But yeah, look, so it's a 15-second, Berserk is 15 seconds, right? Yeah, 15 seconds. That means it's going to fall off at, man, is my math right? 24, 7. So 24 is way down here. That means all these Mangles right here are actually hitting 3 targets. The Mauls are hitting 2, so this is pumper. However, the top 3 didn't do this strategy. Instead, they just stayed swiping. So if you're interested in which one will work better, I don't know, because they're obviously the top 5. These guys are all great performers. But this is also another great strategy for Berserk, where you can actually use your Mangles to hit 3 targets and put the Mangle on 3 targets, making, I mean, not your abilities very well, but other people's bleed abilities hit pretty hard, because I don't think swipe is treated as a, no, it's not treated as a bleed where a shred is. So still a really cool idea, really cool strategy. And then again, they just went back into swipe, and they look like they use lacerate in between them, in between mauls instead of mangle. I don't know if this is the play, but again, they're still number 4, so they're not obviously not struggling. But again, the number 1 play is the swipe with mangle glyph, with maul glyph, and with berserk. Let's look at the last guy, Bro Bear. Did I shout out this fourth person? Point Moo, good job. And then Bro Bear. So let's see what they did. Again, heavy swipe, number 2 on maul. I wonder if they also did the berserk. Let's take a look. Go to events and click cast. In case you're wondering why I click cast instead of just looking at damage done, cast will show you the Savage Roar, Tiger's Fury, and those are actually really important when they use those. So if you're ever looking at someone's logs and you're curious, hey, you know, what's their rotation, you don't want to look at damage done, you always want to look at casts, because the non-damaging activities or spells, or what do you want to call these, are just as important as the damaging spells. So again, they open with Mangle, Savage Roar, Swipe, Tiger's Fury, Berserk. Yep, okay, that makes sense. Global Thermal, no pot here, so either they pre-potted or they just didn't use a pot. Oh, they used a pot down here. Okay. So again, they Berserk at 7. That means this will last until about 22. The 22 is right around here, so they stayed in cat the whole time. Once they go into bear though, look at these mauls. They don't even bother with mangle. They get mangle up probably, so they don't have to worry about it for the rest of the fight, and then just maul. This is absolutely crazy damage if you've got the glyph. And then they go, once their rage, sorry, not their rage, their energy is back to full, they go back to cat, swipe, Tiger's Fury, swipe, back to bear, maul. This is absolutely a pumper build, and I'm actually really excited to try this. I will be building my own spec to have the proper glyphs. And keep in mind, if you are one of those people who doesn't like changing their glyphs or doesn't like having a second build specifically for this, glyphs are super cheap right now. So you can go and buy a mangle maul, all your glyphs, and keep stacks of them, because they do stack, and just swap out for this one fight and then swap back. Just don't forget to swap back. But again, this is the new strategy, or at least for the last maybe month or so, that's what people have been doing. It is all about positioning right. If you're not hitting the perfect position, and you're like, I was hitting only 2, I found out that you can jump to extend your swipe range and hit a 3rd target. It's easier just to get good positioning, and again, I'll put it on the screen so you can see that you have to kind of go over the edge a little bit. But it does make a difference. It makes this fight way more fun instead of just doing mangle and your standard rotation where you're just overusing mangle, or getting like the old tier sets, things like that. Don't need to do that. However, I do want to point out, you still want to make sure you swap your idol to the mangle idol, not using the shred or the rip idol, because as you can see, they don't do either of those buttons. Neither shred nor rip ever get pressed throughout any of these top 5 fights. Anyway, guys, I hope that was interesting. I hope you guys saw a new strategy and learned how the top pumpers are doing it. Thanks for watching, guys, and as always, take care.